Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Lead Champ Pro call. It is Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. If you aren't here on the live recording and you're watching this, or you're not here on the live Zoom and you're watching this recorded, that's great. We appreciate you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, make sure that you get notified. But you know what's even cooler than watching it recorded is being here live with all of the winners, with all the top producers, with everyone that's already making it happen, that's using Lead Champ Pro. So if you want to, join us live. LeadChampLiveDials.com every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And if by the end of this, you're going, wow, I really need to have Lead Champ Pro for my business so that I can treat my business like a business, so I can be more organized, so that I can actually make things happen, then book a demo with me, LeadChampPro.com. I'll be happy to help you show you how Lead Champ can help you take your business to the next level. Now, I want to show off a couple. Before I show off the good news, let's jump into a leaderboard update. For those of y'all that don't already know, every time you hit the What Happened button and send a sale into Lead Champ, not only are you turning that lead into a client and putting them into that retention campaign where they're going to get those monthly payment reminders, they're going to get that thank you card, that birthday card, all of the messaging that we send, but even cooler than that, it actually sends your sale to a live leaderboard inside of our Discord so we can see who's winning and who is actually crushing it out there on the battlefield. So make sure that you're hitting the What Happened button. Make sure that you're seeing that leaderboard update. I want to give you the top 10 for this past week inside of Lead Champ. Number 10 is Rufus Wells Jr. Number 9, Adam Marquis. Number 8, Brian Little. Number 7, Brett Dunham. Number 6, Michael Lay. Number 5, Bryce Stanger. Number 4, Quentin Kelly. Number 3, Mark Diaz. I see you on the call. Number 2, Adam Mostel. And number 1, F&D Financial, which I believe is Drake and Francesca, correct? Excellent. Crushing it with, 16,000 for the week? You guys are absolutely on top of the game. Everyone should be looking to take them off the top of the leaderboard this coming week. And if you haven't been submitting your sales, once again, you need to do it, not just so that you get on the leaderboard, but mainly so that your clients get those cards, get the reminders, so your retention will actually go up and you can keep that business on the books. Okay, let me look and see if we have any good news to share off. And by the way, all of this is in the Discord. Highly recommend. There's a button at the top of Lead Champ to join the Discord. Highly recommend that you do that so you can be a part of the community. You can be in the voice channels, talking to the other members. You can even come in and share your good news, as many of the agents do. And check out this. Dylan Priest forgot to post it in here yesterday. Sold a banger annuity with a tiny IUL along with it. LCP lead, couple of follow-up appointments, 2,400 with NLG, and then just shy of $1 million Athene annuity, which is incredible. You got to love that. Obviously, these don't happen every day, but if you're consistent, you're asking the right questions, you're going to find these, and every once in a while, it's really nice to have a massive sale like that come in. Pretty exciting. Congratulations, Dylan. Bryce Stanger on the leaderboard this week, 4,800 Americo Protection Focus IUL, spouse of a Lead Champ lead. So it wasn't even the lead itself, but actually a beneficiary or referral of a lead, which is huge. And Caleb Tipton, 1832 AMAM, little late night dials. Let's go. Locking it in on the late night. And by the way, guys, if you're looking for a dialer, we did just release recently the Lead Champ Connect Power Dialer. That is a power dialer with the word power in front of it. You need to know that. It does give you more power when you're dialing. A lot of people are really, wondering about that. They ask me all the time. Lead Champ, by the way, already is a power texter. People are, they're like, hey, when are you guys going to get a power texter? Well, go compare Lead Champ's texting to any other CRM you've seen out there. I know some people come here, they're like, oh, mine does a lot. It sends 3 texts. I'm like, yeah, we send 3 texts on an appointment confirmation. We send 14 the first week just to try and book them down for an appointment, right? We are a power texter, but we do have a power dialer now as well. If you're looking for that, leadchampconnect.com. And not only can you dial late night, you can also dial from anywhere on your phone. All right. I know you guys are already tired of listening to me, even though I'm super fired up today. So let's go ahead and get the main event here. Let's get Josh and Jamie up on camera, talking with you guys. And I always love talking these guys up because, number one, they're good friends of mine, but also they're extremely good people. They go out of their way to help other people. They're generous with their time. And they're really, pouring back into this community, helping everyone to take their business to the next level. But also, I know both of them from a long time ago, and neither one of them would have been someone that would have been like, oh, this is like a person that's really got their business together 10 or 12 years ago. Okay. Both of them were disorganized. Maybe they had stacks of papers all around. If I asked Josh how much money he made for the year, he'd be like, I mean, I've made enough, to pay my bills. I need to make a lot more, right? But he couldn't probably give me an exact number. And today, these guys are some of the most organized, most professional, the best stewards of businesses that I've ever seen. I think they both have like weekly or monthly meetings with their accountants. You know what I mean? They've got people sending them reports. Like they know exactly where their business is going, what's happening, which means they have the ability to move the needle, to make the decisions that matter. So super excited to introduce co-founders of Lead Champ, top agents, top agency owners, amazing parents, great husbands, Jamie Chirio and Josh Lockhart. Welcome to the call, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much, Nick. I'm going to kick it off. I do have a little bit of kind of an update for everybody, and then my buddy Jamie's going to be in here with me. But I do want to say that the Nick and I met about 10 years ago now, and everyone should know the first time that we met, we got into an argument about using paper applications versus e-apps. It was a whole thing. It's another story for another day, but that's how I met Nick. So it was over an argument. Imagine that, anybody that knows him. With that said, update. So every week on this call, just so everybody knows, right? Sometimes we're bringing to you, sales, like Grady says, transferable sales ideas, transferable business ideas, tech updates, how-tos, tips, tricks, all the different things. So I want to give a quick tech update on AI. You probably got a mass message last week. We put in the Discord, we text blasted everybody that we're transitioning to version 2 of AI. We've been talking about it for a long time. It is here. So you might notice over the last week, AI is responding, but it's not actually booking the appointments. So that's a thing. So you need to keep an eye on your inbox in LeadChamp, manually book those appointments. I get it. You've been spoiled. We're all there. The reason it's taken a little bit longer is basically the AI provider, there was a coding mismatch, and that caused it to not sync with all the different aspects of LeadChamp and SendBlue and all those types of things. We got the answer and the solution yesterday. So now we can kind of continue on with that production, and we look to have that out next week. And so everybody's back running again. And then we have several additional updates to make it better than what it even was before. So we're really, really excited about that. We'll get into the weeds on that on future calls and kind of let you know all the things, but I just want to let everybody know where that's at. And so as soon as it's live for everybody, which we do have to one by one manually update every person's AI, which is going to be fun. But we have a team that they're, hopped up on energy drinks. They haven't slept in weeks, and we don't sleep around here. So they're up to the task. But again, once it's update, we will send out a mass message. We will post in the Discord. So make sure you're in the Discord in the announcements channel specifically. That's where we post everything, and then we will send out a text blast. So stay tuned for that. With that said, if Nick, if you could make sure to highlight Jamie, get him up here. Good buddy Jamie. So, Jamie and I have worked together for it's been what, Jamie, four and a half years now? My goodness. That seems like a long time. And both of our backgrounds, we won't go into too much of our background. Jamie might a little bit, but like we've been serial entrepreneurs. We've been super duper broke. I made $19,000 in 2019. I just wanted to match the year to see what that would feel like. I don't recommend it. It's hard to raise a family on $19,000 in one car. That, it's a whole nother thing. But life quickly turned around. But Jamie specifically had a similar experience and did some things that really made a big difference that I've seen other people come into this business and especially from a perspective of Lead Champ Pro, right? I get to see because of the support that we provide, a lot of data on what people are doing, how it's their sales are going, and what I've seen. And anybody that's been around for any length of time, I see a lot of people that get good at sales, but they get taken out of the business because they're bad at the business part. They can get a lot of people to say yes and get commissions flowing into the account, but everything goes sideways. Jamie had a guy that we worked with early on, came in, had an incredible start, made just bukus of money. I don't remember the number. It was like tens of thousands of dollars his first month. And pretty quickly it was all gone. And he was right back in to a bad financial situation pretty much right away because of his business and financial choices, not because he was good or bad at sales. So you can be really, really good at sales and then bad at everything else, and you're still not going to get ahead. And we're going to focus on some of those things. Also, um, it's a financial aspect. Also, it's just knowing what to look at so you know that you're progressing, right? It's not just about getting somebody to say yes, let's put an application in. It's about retaining a client, having a business that continues to get better, profitability, and ultimately you want to have a situation, a lifestyle, right? Like Jamie and I, he wanted to outdo me, right? Like I have two kids and he's like, I'm just going to keep having kids until the end of time. And he's younger than I am. So who knows? He might have his own football team by the end of the day, right? But what was my even point in that? I don't know what my point in that is, but I guess my point is right. You can have the financial thing and know how, but still have profitability holes in your business. And oh, that's what it was. As you have a kids and a life, you want a life and a business that you can wake up and be happy to go to, and not one that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm tired, I'm dragging, I can't stand these people. Is this even worth it? If you're having conversations like that, right, you need to turn things around, and that's what this call is going to be about. So, with that said, Jamie, appreciate you being on. I love the hat. Had I known, I would have wore the matching hat, but I'm rocking the lead champ. So, let's get this thing kicked off, Jamie.
Yes, 100%. So we had said something the other day. We were talking about how in this business, like you kind of, if you're going to just sell, you're going to sell forever unless you go out and you build an agency. And then we talked about this whole idea of, I can't remember exactly how we said it, but we're like, if you're gonna not build a team, you still have to build a business. And I think that's super important. So I thought that was like something that really resonated with me the other day is like, yeah, you can like building a team and building a business, like two totally different things. You can be a solo producer and you still don't have a business. So I think that's something that's super important. So kind of what I want to do, just spend a couple minutes. And some people have been around long enough, they've maybe heard a little bit of my story and kind of the do's and the do nots. So I'm just gonna dive a little bit in there, and then Josh and I got a little back and forth that we're gonna go through in regards to some things that we can do to treat our business like a business. So like again, some of these calls are hey, new updates, new features. Others transferable sales ideas, and others are hey, don't do what we did so you can avoid the roadblocks. And then if you've been there, before, and some of this information is like, yeah, I know this, Jamie. I've heard this before. Um, I've been there where, the teachability kind of goes down, and think about how we can share this with new people. That's a new realization I'm coming back to. I remember going to the Ignite event back a couple of months ago. And if I'm being totally honest, it was the first time in about 2 years that I took any notes at an event. And I felt super humbled doing that because I wasn't doing it for myself. It was how I could take something away from this event, share it with others. So, maybe you already know some of this information, but keep in mind that we can go ahead and share it with some other people on the team. So, for me, we get to talk today just in general about treating our business like a business, being a good steward of our commissions, of just kind of everything in our life. I've traditionally not been a good steward of anything. And the reason that I have a lot of credibility on this subject is because of the many, many businesses that I've been a part of and paying the price. So this is my ninth business in 12 years, which sounds just kind of ridiculous to say out loud. And people go, oh, that's so impressive. No, no, it's not. A lot of things that did not work out. But my first business, way before FFL, when I was 18 to 22, I was making, $100,000 a year when I was 18 selling energy drinks to college students. Anybody who kind of knows my past, that was a lot of fun. And, I lived in the expensive apartments. I drove the fancy BMW. I flew first class. I was joked around. I was a hotel snob. And if it was under $100, It wasn't real. Okay, it wasn't real. Just swipe the card. But I was living kind of the high of being, a commission-based salesperson, kind of thinking that nothing would ever change and that the money would keep coming in. And I had a super rude awakening back in 2015 when the company I was working for, shut their doors and with that shut off their commissions. So it's Friday, it's payday, and they say, hey, we're not paying paychecks. Well, guess what? Because it was residual income and residual commissions, I spent everything from last week because it was always coming back. But guess what? It didn't come back this week. So, rude awakening. So, my commissions, they disappeared overnight. But guess what did not disappear? It was my expenses and my liabilities. Those did not disappear. So, I also, on top of all of that, I didn't save for taxes. So, I was years behind. If anybody's ever dealt with the IRS, it's not fun. So I kind of spent a few years, jumping from opportunity to opportunity, trying to get back to where I was, trying to dig myself out of the hole that I created. And back in 2017, it just became like too much to handle, which, humbling time. I had to file bankruptcy. I had to get all my stuff repossessed in front of my friends and family. That fancy BMW, had to get taken away from me when I was living with a group of five guys in the house, embarrassing. And then, what did I do? I went back and I begged my dad for my high school, Ford Eclipse or something, a bright red car that was falling apart, begged him if I could have it back. And it was embarrassing. And honestly, I didn't, tell many people that I went through that. And really until just a couple of years ago when I came into FFL, when I was, able to, get rid of a bunch of that personal debt and start over. But, I still owed over $50,000 to the IRS in back taxes when I started here with FFL. So I didn't really trust myself to be a good steward of my commissions. Before FFL even. So before I got back into commission-based sales, building a team, I started a traditional business in the marketing space and I paid myself a salary instead because that seems safer. But when I found out about, life insurance specifically, I kind of decided I was going to be an agent. I was fearful that I was ultimately going to put myself in that same situation that I did before. So kind of told myself, hey, we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. And, the best thing that I ever did was, decide that I was going to treat my business like a business. So the first distinction that I had to make, I think this is really, really important, is whose money is this? Like, is it my money or is it my business's money? And in the past, I treated everything like it was my money, and my business always suffered. So again, like if you're not going to build a team, you still got to build a business. So in general, like I had to treat it like a business. And in the past, I never treated anything like a business. I treated it like it was mine. So everything suffered. So, I kind of think of, a traditional business. Let's give an example like a Subway franchise. If I own a Subway franchise, when the money comes in, what does the money go to first? Does the money go to, my living expenses, or does the money go towards buying bread, meat, and cheese? It's a Subway. I got to have bread, meat, and cheese. That's the most important thing. So I knew that if I needed to fuel my insurance business, I had to make sure I always had leads. So I mean that is like the most important basic thing. Again, you've been here a long time, you're like, duh. But again, like how important is it to make sure that new people understand that leads are the lifeblood of our business? If we don't have anybody to talk to, we're no better. And when I say no better, Josh and I have been this person. We're no better than the person who goes to the mall and randomly approaches people and say, "Hey, do you want to buy my thing? Do you want to buy my widget? Do you want to buy my service?" And I've been there. I've been the person who's constantly been like, "Hey man, nice shoes. Want to buy something?" Like it's just, or someone raised their hand and say, "Hey, I requested the thing that you have. Give me some more info." So when I first got started, I'll give you guys a quick tip on kind of how my wife and I invested into our business one time and have never had to put money back into the business again. And again, some of y'all are way past your first investment, but having this conversation with new people. So we had this conversation and decided that we could afford to invest $1,500 into leads. And I remember hearing this podcast about somebody in the beginning, and they said you have to learn how to play with house money, and that like totally changed my perspective on every single lead purchase. And he talked about how when you go to the casino, if you bring $100 in with you, and you go to play with it, and if I win $100, a good steward would put the original $100 back in their pocket, and they'd play with the profit. They would play with house money. Well, I've been to the casino one too many times in my past, and I probably would have just doubled down on the 200, lost it. But I've learned put the original 100 back in my pocket, play with house money. You lose the house money, then you go home and you still have your original $100. So, one of the first things that I did is, I went to the bank. I was encouraged by, my mentor in this business to open up two bank accounts, a checking and a savings account. Again, super simple. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Doesn't have to be an LLC. But the goal is just to learn how to start keeping things separate. And, I deposited that original $1,500 into the business checking account, and I made sure that all of my insurance carrier deposits would go into that account. I purchased my first batch of leads. I worked them really hard. I squeezed every single drop out of that batch, and I made a few sales, and those sales were deposited into my business checking. And what did I do? I paid ourselves back of our original investment. Now there's still a few grand left over after I did that. Now did I take that money and immediately go pay off our credit cards and immediately go fill our refrigerator with organic groceries and go buy a TV and pay our rent? No. I left that money there because this time I decided this isn't my money. This is my business's money. So then I also started to make a decision that every single time I get a deposit, no matter what, I'm going to transfer a percentage of that deposit into a business savings account to prepare for a worst case scenario. So we can talk about that account being for taxes, for chargebacks, but we were meticulous with it. And in the beginning, we did it with every single deposit. And as time's gone on, I haven't had to do that in the same way that I did when I was first getting started, because we got different strategies for write-offs and different things to make sure that, we're good. But in the beginning, it was so important for me to just do that, to make it a habit that this is not my money. This is not my money. This is not my money. 30% of this goes into the business savings account. Everything else stays in the business checking. And then, when there was days when I was first getting started, when I was still proving my production, like proving that I could do this consistently, what would happen? I'd have low deposits, I'd have a chargeback, and then I'd look in my business checking account, and maybe there wasn't enough money there to buy my next batch of leads. I'm sure, raise your hands, you guys have been there before. But I had that rainy day fund that I could go back to my business savings. I took a chunk of every single deposit and put it over there, and I'd be able to go dip in there if I needed leads. And that was the only reason I ever dipped in there, was for leads. And instead of pulling more money out of our personal, like going to my wife and saying, "Hey babe, like this isn't working. Like, can we grab some more money out of our personal savings account, our personal checking account?" My wife was a teacher at the time. "Can we take your paycheck and spend it on my business that's not working?" No, because I took a percentage of my deposits and I put them to the side, I was always able to grab from my business savings to be able to go out and buy leads. And I would borrow from myself, and then I'd pay myself back like I was a bank. I treated it like a business. I put that money back in my business savings account. So then the next time that I got a deposit, instead of maybe putting 30%, I put 50% when I had a good week, where instead of just, making my money back or, 3, 4xing my money, maybe I had a week where I 10xed my money. So instead of putting 30% away, I put 50% away and paid myself back for those leads that I needed that week. So we did that for our entire first year in the business. And we ended up with well over $100,000 in that savings account. That was with me borrowing from myself all year long. And we didn't owe anywhere near $100,000 in taxes. So we paid our taxes. Then I paid back all 50,000 of my back taxes. And then I still had money left over to go into that account for the next year for when hard times would come. And we just decided to treat our business like a business. And that was the first thing that I did. And I'm so thankful that I did that because it kept me in business. So, before we kind of transition into this conversation with Josh and I just want to talk about one of the biggest things I realized, and I'm so glad that I didn't do this right away, is I watched so many agents that started at the same time as me who increased their lifestyle way too quickly. So I proved my production, but I kept my lifestyle the same. So when I got started in the business, my wife and I were living in a house in Oregon on her 100-year-old family farm. So grandma was our landlord, and we paid $1,000 a month in rent to grandma. And I drove a 2009 Toyota Corolla. I still drive that car today. I put 250,000 miles on this car in 2.5 years driving to in-homes. Okay. And then, when we got our first nice car for the family, it was because we were having a kid and we needed something to put a car seat in. But I watched people, take their commissions and immediately go to the fancy vacation, go get the $900 a month truck payment. And what I realized that they were doing is they were just starving their business early on. They would make more money in a month than they've ever earned, and they take off time. And we always joke around and say that they went to Disneyland. And when they get back, they spent all their money at Disneyland, and then 30% of their business falls off, and then they have no money for leads. They have a chargeback, and that puts most people out of business. The guy that Josh talking about, from back in the day who had this great first, second, third month. His mistake was not a mistake that most people would make. His mistake was he came in with a bunch of debt and he just decided to pay off all of that debt in a lump sum right away. I came in with a lot of debt too. I just decided I'm going to keep kicking the can as far as I possibly can and keep making minimum payments so I don't starve my business. So he came in with like $100,000 in debt. He paid off all that debt. You think the debt collection company is giving any of that money back to him? Absolutely not. So that money's gone. That is to somebody else. He no longer has access to that to, fund his business. Whereas I had a bunch in a savings account and I just kept going, kept going, kept going. I'm like, you know what? As long as I make this minimum payment, they're not going to come get me. Thankfully, they never came and got me. But the difference was I waited until I proved production and then I went and paid off those debts, a couple lumps at a time. And I was able to keep it in my business. So we chose, to reinvest back into leads when we first got started because we knew that I could prove that I always got a return. So I've got friends, who've invested into all kinds of things, different businesses, and they talk about their ROI. They talk about their return on investment. I've got friends who got really deep into crypto, people who bought Bitcoin, a long time ago, back in 2007. And even looking at that, like let's say you bought Bitcoin in 2007 and you got it at 7,000 bucks. And now what? It's over $100,000. So okay, you 12, 13 x your money. Like that's amazing. Maybe right place, right time. They got a 40x return depending on what they did. But I look at this business and I can't think of a better investment. When my wife and I invested $1,500 into leads, and yeah, we can do a whole profit and loss statement, but I'm just going to keep it as simple as possible. I've written over $2 million in annual premium in 4 years off of technically that original $1,500 in expenses, minus obviously the continued lead cost. But that's over 1,000x return off of that original $1,500. So I can't think of a better thing to be a good steward of. So my whole thing is if you want to put $100,000 in your savings account by the end of the year, be a good steward of your commissions, learn to play with house money, keep writing business, and then go build a team because when the overrides start kicking in, that's the cheat code to getting ahead in your business, and your life can change dramatically. I've seen agents, go all in on this business, and it changed their life. And for me, I came in with very low confidence, and this business, gave me my confidence back. $50,000 in debt, all my stuff repossessed a few years prior. Now, I moved states. My wife and I built a house here in South Carolina. And, am I where I want to be? Absolutely not. But, I at least have learned from my past mistakes to avoid going back to where I was before. So, it takes making some hard decisions. And one of the biggest things that was really, like, I guess, a sobering thought for me was thinking about, like, when you're in a bad position, you have no choices. Like, you have no choices when you're broke. So it's like I was willing to make some sacrifices and treat my business like a business so that I could have choices. Like now, my wife gets to homeschool our kids and she gets to stay home and not be a teacher. When you're broke, you have no choices. You don't get to choose where you live. You don't get to choose what's in your fridge. You don't get to choose where your kids go to school. You don't get to choose if you miss your kid's game, whatever it is. So for me, I just looked at it as, if I'm willing to treat my business like a business, then I can earn the right to choose what I want. I can earn the right to make my own schedule. I can earn the right to live the laptop lifestyle, all the things. I think most people haven't earned it and they try to make their own schedule and they go, I'll just work 3 hours a day and see what happens. No. Like now I look at my business and I used to work, 6 days a week. I was telling, someone at the gym this morning, I'd leave the house at 6 a.m. I'd get home at 9 p.m., 6 days a week. I did not control my schedule. But now, like I typically don't start work until 10:30 every day, every Saturday, which I would never dare to have taken off a Saturday ever for the first 2 years of my business. But now I spend 3, 4 hours with my wife every Saturday morning. We go on, marriage meeting where we go, it's like a little marriage, date, state of our marriage we do every week. We have our child care come in. And, I've got a couple of nights that I work late and a couple of nights that I get to hang out with my family. But I've earned the right to set my own schedule because I've treated my business like a business. I've treated myself like an employee long enough and disciplined myself enough and created enough structure and parameters for myself long enough then I know what to expect. So if you don't do that, then you just really don't know what to expect. And, in my personal opinion, you don't deserve to be able to treat yourself like a business owner until you've treated yourself like an employee that you're about to fire for a couple of years. So I'll start there. I know we can dig into a lot of different things, but just in general, like, we got to treat our business like a business. There's so many things we can do, and there's some practical questions that I know that, Josh and I are going to go over here, but, appreciate you guys and hope that helped a little bit.
No, Jamie, that was really good. I mean, again, I know that I've everybody that I know that's fallen into the trap of like, hey, I just went and made a big sale. I had a good week. I had a good month. And then we all, as salespeople, like if you're 1099 and you're like making a go of it, you kind of have to have an ego to some level. And so we'll talk to people and they'll say, yeah, I'm a 30K producer. And usually what that means is like they had a 30K month recently. And now in their mind, they're telling themselves they're a 30K producer, but they haven't quite become that yet over like a year period. Or you have a really good, month or even a good year and like you're like, that's who I am. And then you start to kind of make some sloppy decisions in your business and your finances as a result of that. So a couple things that you said. Number one, you kind of use the phrase prove production. So this would be kind of geared towards new people. You said all those great things. You said, hey, I saved 100 grand, which is like, oh man, amazing. But like if you didn't catch it, you worked like hell the whole year to be able to do that. You work 6 days a week. Yeah, we were leaving the house at 6, 7 a.m., not get home until, late and that kind of thing. And now we're all at telesales. But my point in that is if you're newer or maybe right like you haven't had the production to that you're happy with and you're going to say okay I'm going to start over today, right? You need to prove to everybody and yourself that like you can sell insurance. And I would say for anybody that hasn't reached the level where you have sold and issued $10,000 of annual premium in a month, right? You don't know how to sell insurance yet. All right. Maybe you've made a sale or two, but if you haven't sold and issued $10,000 in a month, you do not yet know how to sell insurance, right? Maybe you know all the ins and outs of a particular product. Maybe you can regurgitate a script, but in practice, Nick always says to know and not to do is not to know. So that's kind of number one, right? And I had somebody that asked recently, this is a while back, they're like, should I be going in debt with my lead bill to make this work? It's like, no, absolutely not. Um, don't be silly. So, you hear about people, I spend $1,000 a week on leads, I spend $2,000 a week on leads, or whatever people, top producers say, and you go, I need to start spending that money. If you haven't sold 10K yet, probably not. You need to go get a batch of leads, grind them into the dirt until you can do that, right? And then once you do that, you've proven to yourself and the world you know how to sell insurance. Now we can start putting some money behind that. Would you add anything to that, Jamie?
No, I mean, I think it's profound when you think about like once you have sold, I don't know, five, six, seven, eight applications in a month that have issued, you've proven yourself that you can do this. But before that, it's just uh, you just need a little more practice. And before you go, especially with everything that comes with like oh, I know how to do this, so now I'm going to do what Josh does, and I'm going to spend $2,000 a week, and that's going to solve my problems. No. When that solves your problems is when we can look at it as a mathematical equation. And I can go, all right, I've seen that you've spent $1,000 on leads, three, four different times. And each time that you've done it, first time you just made your money back. Second time you made back three times your money. Third time you made your money back. Well, the fourth time you made seven times your money. That's amazing. Okay, and then you keep doing it, and like you go from buying leads every week. First, you start out you buy $1,000 in leads, and you just work the crap out of it until you can't work it anymore and get as much as you can until you get some commissions, and you buy another 1,000. And it's like you're not really on like a weekly grind when you're first getting started. It's just kind of whenever I have some commissions that come in and I can afford to get some leads, I'll get some, and I'll do a buy per lead. Whatever, $500, $1,000, 700, 200, whatever you can afford, But then you get to that point where it's like you are consistently buying leads every week. Then it gets to that point where you start to do your numbers, which we can talk a lot about, how to look at your numbers. But when you see that you're consistently making your money back plus a little bit, and now you can start to do the math and go, okay, like I look at someone who goes, yeah, I've been spending $1,000 a week for 6 months, and I typically issue, about 15 to 20,000, and it's like it's a consistent thing. And I look at that and go, okay, if you just double your lead spend, you'll double your production. But it's like somebody who makes their money back this week and then forexes their money this week and then loses money this week and then does it again. It's just like all over the place. Spending more money is not going to solve your problem. What's going to solve your problem is like figuring out foundationally what's going on. Because I talk to people all the time. Like now that like this skill set has been built of, I know how to sell insurance because I've done the over 10,000 so many times over the last 4.5 years that yeah, I don't want this. So please, please, Lord, don't let this happen to me. If you took everything I had and all I have is $1,000, we could do it again because of the skill set.
Yeah. So with that said, two comments I would make on that, right? If you haven't been consistently selling at least 10K, then what happens, like Jamie said a minute ago, you start doing that 30, 60, 90 days, and you're like, oh man, I'm making money. No, you're not. You're not making that much money because you haven't experienced a chargeback yet. You're in your first 30, 60, 90 days of a new level of selling. Even if you're selling 10K right now or 20K, and all of a sudden you kick it up and you're doing double that now, you're like, oh my gosh, I just unlocked a new level. I'm making all this money. It's great. Wait, wait, wait. A new level of chargebacks is also coming with that because it's all percentage based. And so you kind of have to wait 90 days to see what it actually looks like and what it actually feels like is more important because most people they operate on feelings, not their numbers. Unfortunately, we all fall a victim to this. Here's a common scenario, right? Let's say Jamie is selling 20K a month. And then he's like, I'm going to double down. I'm going to have my biggest month ever. And he goes and sells 60K next month. Okay. That's 3 times what he normally sells. Okay. So in the month he sells 60K, maybe, after advances and everything, he deposits $50,000. You're like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And he feels rich. Well, if you 3 times your sales, typically you're going to have 3 times the chargebacks, right? So let's say you have a 20% chargeback rate. What's 20% of 60,000? That's $12,000, right? Now, if you take $12,000 away from your normal production of $20,000, you basically almost have no money left. So what happens is somebody will have some normal months, they'll have one big month, and then they go back to normal, and it feels like when they go back to normal, they're making no money. And they are, or excuse me, they're not making money because of their increased chargeback. So the other thing that Jamie said is he said he had a marriage meeting. Now, I would, and my point in bringing that up is that's an audit. That's a weekly audit of how his marriage is doing, right? Whether it's your marriage, your finances, your business, your health, you should be auditing, looking at numbers. When we talk about our finances, right? Like we have to go, oh, okay, I have X amount of dollars in my bank account, and the Amex bill needs X amount of dollars. So we tend to look at those numbers, but the rest of it we just don't even look. We buy some leads and we get some sales, we get some deposits, and either there's more money in the bank account than there was yesterday or there's less, and that's kind of the extent of where most people are at. But Jamie's taking the approach of like, hey, I'm going to audit these things on a regular basis. And so if you're auditing your business on a, let's say, a daily or weekly basis, you'll recognize those things. The next thing is, when should you spend more money on leads? Well, again, number one, if you've proven to yourself that you can actually sell insurance. And number two is if you are issuing 3 times your lead spend. If your issued business is 3 times your lead spend, that's a good indication that you can spend more money. If you're issuing less than 3 times, after you take out the equation of chargebacks, advance caps, advances, you're probably not profiting that much, and anything can go wrong, and now you're losing money. But once you're issuing 3 times, like Jamie said, if you spend more money, you will net more. Okay. Now that also comes with a caution. Some people go, okay, let me just go dump just a boatload of money and just if I just have enough leads. This is where, I had an agent one time who was a 30K producer, spent $50,000 in a single month on leads. Now, I don't know too many people that have any business spending $50,000 in a month on leads for themselves. Because if you're a sole producer, you don't have a system to process effectively that many leads. You're just throwing them into the wind and just going, well, I should sell enough to outdo this. That's not most people. Now, if you're with Lead Champ, right? I don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying to go spend 50,000 next month on leads. I am not saying that, Derek Robinson. Okay. But what I am saying is that is a system to help process leads, right? They're going to get texted, they're going to text back, right? So does that mean if all the checks are there, you can push the pace? Yes, it does. If you're the type of person who pays attention to your text box and AI is on, okay, maybe that means at some point, right, you have a staff person to have eyes on those things, right? And so as soon as you have some of these systems, that means you can spend more, do more, you can push the pace on these things a little bit as long as you have some of those foundational pieces. Anything you would add to that, Jamie?
I'm just looking at the chat, and Derek says 50K a month in leads. Here I come. Please don't, Derek. That's all I have to add there.
Warning, warning, warning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you're, now if you don't know, like I would challenge many people, like, how much did you spend last week? How much did you spend last month? Right? Go look at your bank statements, go look at your receipts, and then go look at your issue paid business. What are those numbers? And I can't tell you. I know no one on this call because we have top producers on this call, but your teams of people, right? They don't know, right? All they know is it feels like I'm selling. It feels like there's more money in the bank account. I remember early on, there was a week in my business where I had sold a bunch, right? Jamie, we were in the home. I'd sold a bunch of Americo and Guaranteed Advantage stacked. And you know what, the deposits are on their way. And I remember it was a Wednesday, and I'm like, I haven't gotten any deposits this week. And I was kind of freaking out, but I'm at least logical enough to know there's an answer for everything, right? Maybe it's in underwriting, maybe it's in pending, like something's happening. And I was just like, where is the money? Why isn't this? And the next day I got $8,000 in deposits.
Hmm.
Right. So our feelings can play tricks on us and it makes us make poor decisions. So I would suggest a weekly audit of what is going on. And some of those things that I would track, and this is not an all-encompassing list, but not limited to, and Jamie can help me fill in the gaps of like, how many appointments did I have this week? Right? If somebody asks you, how many appointments did you schedule this week, and you don't know the answer, that's the wrong answer. Right? For Jamie and I, starting out, it was 30 or bust. If you don't have 30 appointments, like, are you even working full time?
Mhm.
All right. Telesales, probably a bit more depending on what you want your production to be. So how many appointments this week? Right. How many presentations this week? All right. How much did you spend on leads this week? Right. How much did you sell? How much did you get approved? Right. Because that's a big difference. We don't want any submit superstars that are broke. Right. It's like every week we're going to be like shouting you out on the lead champ leaderboard, but then like you haven't made any money because nothing's issuing. Maybe you're a bad underwriter. All right. If you have staff, right? Like this is a big thing for Jamie and I in our personal insurance businesses and in Lead Champ, right? What we found out. Okay, I can see some people on the screen or type in the chat. Let's be honest with ourselves. How many people here are very well intentioned? You work hard, you sit in the chair for long hours, but there's some days and some weeks where you're like, I actually didn't get much done because I'm a mess. I have ADD and I organized my pens. I clicked around in Lead Champ. I, play. By the way, if you're in Discord, I'm just going to let a secret out. And if you are in Discord and you play computer games on your computer, we can see that you're playing games. And I've literally messaged people and it's like, dude, it's 1 o'clock. Stop playing Call of Duty. Have some respect yourself. You're an adult. Come on. Okay. So don't play games on your computer if you're in Discord during the day. I will think less of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
throwing
one
that
time
out
I saw
there.
Josh playing Roller Coaster Tycoon, and he was like, "It was my daughter." I was like, "Okay." I thought it was.
I have never played Roller Coaster Tycoon. I would go sit in the closet and do it on my phone. Anyway, so now we all say, like we just said, hey, that happens to us. Okay. So if you have staff, right, do a weekly check in on your staff with whatever it is. And it's not like you have to be their parent, but you have to communicate the expectations of what you want them to do. Maybe it's a staff person and you ask them to check on policies or run your numbers every week. You should get a weekly report of what that is. Maybe it's somebody you have dialing and setting appointments. I say this all the time. If you're not meeting with your dialers at minimum once a week, expect them to just not be doing anything, right? And I can't tell you how many people have had dialers that are literally not calling people, and then you're paying them to not call people. Does that mean they're bad people? No, not necessarily. But, lacking accountability, we all tend to go a little bit sideways. So you have to check in with all the people. If you have a team of people, and we have some people that have big agencies on here. Jamie has a big agency. I have some agents that, tolerate me and I appreciate them. But my point is, you have to check with them every single week. Because here's what's happening. If you have agents on your team and no one's ever told you this, I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. You probably have agents. If you're blessed to have a top producing agent on your team and you don't check in with them at least, like let's say you have somebody that produces 30K a month and you don't check in with them at least twice a month just to see how they're doing, they think less of you. Okay. Because they'll come to us and they'll say some crazy stuff like, oh, I'm trying to get to the next level, but my upline doesn't help me. And now the reality is, like, you're an adult. Why don't you ask for help? Well, they should know that I am not selling very much. Why don't they reach out to me? This is the type of things that people say. Okay. So don't think that everybody has it figured out. Don't think that they're an adult and they'll just ask on their own accord. They won't. Okay. Just, check in and do an audit with everybody. How is it going? What's going on? You have to take responsibility for everything and be the one to reach out first. Anything you would add to that, Jamie?
No, I mean that's such a real thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many people are no longer here that had been top producers on my team because I thought that they were just doing okay. So yeah, I mean, I mean, if I didn't, if my wife and I didn't check in with each other every week, we'd have a problem. So definitely important to just be on top of things. Like again, if we're gonna treat our business like a business, we have to eliminate being passive about everything. We have to take a look, and sometimes that look is it's quite ugly when you get under the hood of your business. But you have to see it before you can do anything about it.
So yeah, I'll give you another example. This was about a year ago. We transitioned to IULs, and that the transition was a bit rough. I'll be honest, and I remember we had a really, really good month. Um, money was flowing, policies were issuing, and I'd made a bunch of profit. This was like last February, and then the next couple of months were really bad, and I was getting really angry about it, and I'm like, you start looking for things to blame. Like it's the leads, it's the whatever, right? Fill in the gaps. There's many things that you can blame, right? My what happened button isn't loading. That's what it is, right? And so I said, okay, be logical, Josh, sit down. And I sat down for 2 hours and I went through every single policy that we had submitted in the good month, and I compared it with the bad month. And in that particular month, What I found out is, and no favoritism on carriers here, I'm just telling you, I'm just delivering what I found, is in the good month, we wrote a whole bunch of Americo and Mutual of Omaha. What do we know about Americo and Mutual of Omaha? If you write it, you know by the end of the application it's approved. In the bad month, we had we had stopped writing those carriers and we'd written all carriers that aren't simplified issue. So I bet you can guess what happened, right? It's like we had at one point I had 300,000 stuck in underwriting that I wasn't getting paid on. And I'm like writing a policies, but I'm not getting paid on policies. So I was like, oh, I get it, right? We're still spending the same amount on leads. We're still working the same amount. We're still selling the same amount. We're not getting paid the same amount. Maybe I should strategically change what I'm going, how I'm going about this. This is my fault. This is not anybody else's fault. But if you don't take the time to have those conversations, it just feels like it's not working. Um, Last thing I'll direct a couple things I'll direct your attention to do is in terms of lead champ. I've talked about this before. I'm going to give you the short version. We'll make some additional videos on this. If you have not checked out our knowledge base inside of lead champ, make sure to do so. There's some good gems in there. One in particular is if you don't know how to run filtered lists inside of lead champ, is one video that would be helpful to everybody right now called How to Dial Your Leads. So you can go here, type how to dial your leads. It's me with my big giant beard, which sometimes I do get beard envy of myself. Look at that thing. You can barely see it. It's huge. My wife made me shave it. Anyway, I go there on how to run a filtered list and the most effective way to go through and dial your leads. But once you become familiar with filtering lists and using different fields and things like that, you can begin to look at your leads and see what's going on, right? Hey, if I uploaded, XYZ carrier, right? There's all or carrier vendor, right? There's Agent Center, there's Kaboom, there's AJC, there's LeadChamp, there's the ILC, there's all kinds of things. And if you're buying a specific lead type, you can say, okay, for the month of what are we in? August, we just went through. Any lead that was created in August, how many were there? 400. Okay. How many appointments were booked out of that? Boom, you can run that list. And as long as you're using LeadChamp, it's going to bring up that number. And you go, okay, I did really well on those leads in August. I didn't do really good on those leads in August. How many of them has AI responded to? Okay, so this is a video that we'll make and kind of break this down because it's been a long time coming. But you can literally, if your leads are going in and you're using the system, then you can begin to run these checks and go, okay, I did really good on these. These responded a lot. I booked a lot on these. I didn't book a lot on these because what tends to happen is we'll go through a month. Okay. And you make sales right away, but a lot of times you make sales 2 weeks later on somebody that filled out the form 2 weeks ago, right? And then we think, oh, I'm doing really good this week. Well, no, it was actually you're doing really good this week based on leads 3 weeks ago. And so it gets skewed on how it's actually going. So go check out that video. You get a little bit comfortable with doing filtered lists. Of course, it'll help you dial leads. So that's one thing that you can do. And I challenge you to set up a weekly rhythm of a check-in with yourself and your business, right? Where you just sit down. This is one thing that is extremely hard for a lot of people to do. And I say a lot of people because we're all salespeople. We all have too much caffeine, ADD, and we can't pay attention to anything. I know that's me and most of my friends, unless you're Sheila Day, right? She's super organized. Yeah, look at this maniac over here with his 3 Celsiuses, right? Pray for my friend Jamie.
It's
My
it's over the
goodness.
last 3 days. So let's just it actually happened
Okay.
today. Just this is my desk is just covered in cans and papers, even though I got lead champ,
Yeah.
still somehow I'm there.
Yeah, yeah. So, put it on your calendar an hour this week, right? Because if it's not on your calendar, I know you're not going to do it, where you're going to sit and you're going to review your week of business, right? How many presentations, how many appointments, right? Look through your leads, clear your inbox in Lead Champ, right? This week, some people that are top producers. I looked through their inbox because I was servicing their account, and I literally saw people asking for appointments that did not get responded to. Stresses me out. I literally lose sleep, thinking about you guys. I don't want you to miss appointments. Just get cleaned up, right? Wednesdays at 8 a.m., you get an underwriting email from Lead Champ. Go clear that out. I have several people in my underwriting pipeline that I got this morning, that I'm like, oh, that guy's been in underwriting for like a year. Why is he still in there? Right. So it's Wednesday. If you sold policies in Lead Champ, you got an email this morning. Go check those emails and just do a cleanup, because if you've ever gone in your office, I am not like the most organized person. That's why I married an organized person. Okay. Um, I'm not the most organized person. With that said, when my desk gets too messy and there's too much stuff around, it's like my brain is cluttered. And when it's cleaned up, I feel like I can move faster. The same thing happens in your business. So take some time, audit your business, an hour a week, and I challenge you to sit there for the whole hour. And once the hour's up, get up and don't belabor over things that don't matter, right? That's the other thing. And don't do it during, income producing activity time. Do it like Saturday at 2 or Thursday at 4, or some random middle of the time. Anything
Hey,
you'd add,
Josh,
Jamie?
yeah, I just want to hear you die on this hill real quick about what not to do during income producing activity time.
Um, yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll make an all-encompassing list, right? So you sit down, right? Like one of my favorite times to dial is first thing in the morning, right? Like yesterday morning, in like 35 minutes, I set 5 appointments. And, is that all the appointments I ever need to set? No, but I could get it done and I have momentum in the day. But what tends to happen is we sit down and we want to ease in the day. We want to drink our coffee, right? We want to check, all of our social media platforms. And if you're checking social media first thing in the morning, and then you get to the end of the day and you're like, what did I even do? And then you despise yourself, and that's a whole downward spiral, right? That is not the time to check, all of your automations in Lead Champ, and it's not the time to, you know, check all the things. I'll tell you what I do. As soon as I sit down at my desk, I have this little routine, right? So I check every one of our emails, right? I check my email, my wife's email, because she's our contracting manager. I check the Lead Champ corporate email. We have 3 different ones. I check all of those. I check all of the Discord tickets. I look over all your tickets to see what tickets are open, what tickets are not. That takes me 10 minutes to do. I check all of the bank accounts that I have access to, mine, my wife's, all of our credit cards, all the Lead Champ accounts, all the Lead Champ cards. Check, 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 check. And just to make sure, and that takes me 15 minutes to do all that. And then from there, right, I'm checking, did anybody respond to me from last night in Lead Champ as an insurance lead? Okay. And then I sit down and I ideally most days start dialing, and I want to get a good 30 minutes in, if you're a sole producer, you don't have a team and other stuff going on, like, yeah, get into it, do a call block. But, start the day with some momentum that moves the needle of your business. This isn't the time to do any kind of admin stuff, right? Save that for, 1:30 or, 3:15 after you had lunch and your eyes are rolling in the back of your head. If you're doing anything else, then you're just throwing money out the window. So, as we close, Jamie, anything that you have? Otherwise, I'm going to do a couple of announcements, promotions. We'll get out of here.
I'm good. Treat it like a business.
Treat it like a business, man, because you are a business man. All right, tomorrow, 10 a.m., we are going to be in the Discord channel in Lead Champ. Go to live dials down at the bottom. Bring your team, bring your staff that dials for you, right? This is old school live dials. We're only setting appointments. It's only an hour, right? You get to hear Jamie dial the phone, me dial the phone. And number one, you want the people that you're surrounded by to listen to not only you, and this was a mistake I made early on. Jamie and I got going, my agency started blowing up, and I was like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to have my own live dials. And what I quickly found out is having your own live dials, it was the Josh Lockhart show. And if Josh Lockhart wasn't dancing like a monkey, then, people weren't getting on and they weren't getting the energy. And I quickly went back to Jamie's, we had like a group live dials. I'm like, I want them to hear from Jamie. I want them to hear from, the other people in the business, because maybe they don't like me. They don't connect with me. I've told them something 10 times, but they hear it from Jamie one time. And it's like, he's the cool uncle and I'm just the dad that no one wants to listen to. So bring your folks to live dials so they can hear from other people on how we set appointments, they set appointments. Even more than that, it's one thing to listen to other people on how they book appointments, but if you really want the superpower of this business, it's letting other people listen to you set appointments. And that scares people. People get shy. They don't want to do it. But do you even know a skill if you can't teach it to a new person, right? You're like, I know how to sell insurance, right? How well do you know it? If you can start to do it in front of other people and you really start thinking about, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I say what I say? That's when it forces you to get to the next level. So that's going to be 10 o'clock Eastern tomorrow in Leave Champ Discord in Live Dials. And the next week, we're very excited to bring a bunch of Lead Champ technical updates for you. So you don't want to miss that call. We're going to go through a whole bunch of things. You'll probably see some new buttons and some different things happening in the platform. And we want to bring those to you. And it's going to be like kind of a whole showcase of that. So be on next week. With that said, you can hang out here on Live Dials, sell with other folks. If not, we'll see you tomorrow. Everybody have a great day.